Yo, what's going on? Welcome into the show. You're watching Philadelphia Eagles Now by Chat Sports. Chase Sr. hanging out here with you. And as always, no matter where you are or how you're tuned in, thank you so much for making today's Eagles Now a part of your day. Coming up on the show, Howie Roseman and Nick Sirianni spoke at the NovaCare Complex in the lead up to the NFL Draft. A little bit of a media session that we're going to react to. And as part of that, some major Eagles trade buzz going into draft night. What does Howie Roseman have up his sleeve? Because history shows he's going to make at least one splash move. Before we talk about that, in case you missed it earlier, I did react to a new ESPN 3-round mock draft from Mel Kiper and Field Yates. That video is up on the channel. Which players did they have going to the Eagles in the first 3 rounds? Check that video out. I, of course, appreciate that. Let's set the table with this. 2025 NFL Draft coming up next week into Thursdays. We will be live for every single day, every single round, discussing every single pick with deep dive analysis on every prospect and draftee. Round 1 underway Thursday night, April 24th. Rounds 2 and 3 will take place on Friday night, April 25th. And then we'll have an early start on Saturday, April 26th, and round out the draft with rounds 4 through 7. So today at the NovaCare Complex, Howie Roseman, general manager for the Eagles, head coach Nick Sirianni, made themselves available for the media press crew, and they took some questions. And some of the notable takeaways I had from what they had to say, Howie Roseman, as far as the first-round grades that he has on these prospects for this 2025 class, he said, we don't have 32 players with round 1 grades, and we rarely do as an organization. Howie Roseman did not say much about exercising the 5th-year option of Jordan Davis as he enters year 4. The deadline to make that decision is coming up very quickly on May 1st. If they do that, then Davis's 5th year becomes fully guaranteed, and it gives him basically another year under team control for Philadelphia. Nick Sirianni was asked about what he looks for in tight end prospects because the Eagles have brought in some for their top 30 visits and met with a few in Indianapolis for the NFL Scouting Combine. And when Nick Sirianni, Howie Roseman, Jeffrey Lurie talked at the NFL owners meetings, they basically talked about Dallas Goedert as if he's not going to be on this team in 2025. And Sirianni said the traits I look for in players at that tight end position, you got to be big, strong, physical, fast, and tough. Good news for the Eagles. This is a deep and talented tight end class. A lot of people linking Philadelphia to LSU tight end Mason Taylor. Howie Roseman, when asked about making trades in the draft, said, being aggressive has always been a part of my DNA. What a swaggy thing to say. But his history as a general manager calling shots for this organization, it backs up that notion. Here's the direct quote, which really brings us into the next portion of today's show. Being aggressive has always been a part of my DNA. I feel fortunate that I have people around me that support that. It always allows us to take chances. And he's talking about really Jeffrey Lurie, the owner of the team, who signs off on these trades and signs off on these contracts, giving him leeway and a runway to have full say and make moves that Howie sees fit, which will lead to the Eagles improving their football team. And Howie Roseman, I look back at this, has a long history of making draft trades on draft night, during the NFL draft, or in the immediate lead up to the draft. And we're not just talking about small moves here, ladies and gentlemen. In 2023, the Eagles traded up for Jalen Carter. In 2022, the Eagles traded up for Jordan Davis. That same night, the Eagles fleeced the Tennessee Titans, traded for A.J. Brown, and then gave him a contract extension. In 2021, the Eagles made a series of moves, and they traded up and then ultimately drafted Heisman Trophy winner DeVonta Smith. In 2020, the Eagles traded for Darius, then gave him a contract extension. In 2019, Philadelphia moved up the draft board for Andre Dillard. In 2018, the Eagles gathered some picks and traded back for Dallas Goedert. They traded out of 32 that year, and that was the Lamar Jackson draft when he went 32 to Baltimore. In 2017, the Eagles traded for Tim Jernigan. He ended up being a starting defensive tackle for the Eagles team that won the Super Bowl in 2017. In 2016, the Eagles matriculated up the draft board a couple of times and then drafted Carson Wentz number 2 behind Jared Goff. And in 2014, the Eagles traded for Darren Sproles. There was a little bit of a gap there. That's when Chip Kelly ousted Howie Roseman and basically took the general manager duties away from him. I'm not sure how he convinced Jeffrey Lurie to do that, but once Howie got back into control, you can see all of the moves that he's made. So it's almost a guarantee that Howie is going to make a trade in the lead up to or during the draft. And the Eagles last year tied an NFL draft record as Howie Roseman made 8 trades during the 2024 draft alone. One of the more notable ones that had a direct impact on the Eagles in 2024, the Eagles moving up in the second round, making a trade with the Washington Commanders to take Cooper DeJean, who ended up being a pillar of that Eagles number 1 overall defense last year. When he became the starter coming out of the bye week, everything changed for that Eagles defense. Went on to have a great season, and then, of course, in the Super Bowl, pick 6 against Patrick Mahomes on his birthday nonetheless. There are 5 players who I look at as viable trade-up targets for the Eagles who would make a lot of sense with how they play, what types of players they are, fulfilling the Eagles' positions of need, and just players who I think the Eagles really value and like scheme-wise, organizational fit, and upside. That's defensive tackle Walter Nolan out of Ole Miss, edge rusher out of Tennessee, James Pierce, edge rusher out of Boston College, Donovan Ezaraku, safety out of Georgia, Malachi Starks, and then Gray Zabel, who can pretty much play any position along the offensive line. One of the top offensive linemen in this class by way of North Dakota State. He's the number 1 center on my big board, but again, he could play a couple of different positions. I don't think he's going to play offensive tackle at the next level. I think he's more of an interior offensive lineman, but those are 5 players I look at as viable trade-up targets for the Eagles, where if they're there between 22, 25, maybe a little bit beyond, Howie Roseman could look to make a move to move up in that draft order to take one of these players. You know, Walter Nolan can really help you replace Milton Williams. James Pierce ran a sub-5 40-yard dash at 250 pounds. He's good against the run, elite as a pass rusher, has burst, twitch, speed coming off that edge spot. I'd throw Mike Green into that category. Donovan Ezaraku might not be the athlete as far as the relative athletic score that the Eagles look for, but elite college production. Malachi Starks helps you replace C.J. Gardner-Johnson, and you know that Howie Roseman can't help himself if a good lineman is on the board in Gray Zabel. Sorry to interrupt this great video, but a reminder to subscribe to us here on Philadelphia Eagles Now. When you hit that sub button, you get free and elite Philadelphia Eagles coverage every single day. We crushed it during the season. We crushed it during free agency. We're doing the same during our draft coverage. So be sure to lock us in and hit that subscribe button today. Our sponsor for today's show, our friends at Game Time. What time is it? Game Time. Last minute tickets at the lowest price guaranteed, and you're going to get in the door at any given venue and have the best seats at the lowest price so that you can have a great memory of going to that event, but you can also save money and have a great view as well. You can see the view from your seat before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. And how about this? You can save up to 60% off buying last-minute tickets to go to sporting events, but also concerts, comedy, theater, and a whole lot more. Game Time Picks is a new feature that makes last-minute ticket buying easier than ever by quickly highlighting the best deals in the stadium. For zone deals, you can save even more when you choose a section and you let Game Time choose the seats. All-in pricing, toggle that. It'll show you your total up front so that you don't get hit with any surprise fees at checkout. And if you find a lower price elsewhere, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, CHATSPORTS, Code CHATSPORTS for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. So Adam Schefter the other day guaranteed that the Eagles are going to make a trade during the NFL draft. And I know some smartasses are going to say, oh, Adam Schefter, bold of him to point out the obvious. But we laid out the framework and we laid out the history of what Howie Roseman has done the last several years as far as making trades during the draft or prior to the draft. And I think it's inevitable that Howie Roseman is going to do something. And then today he's addressing the media and he's saying, yeah, that's part of my DNA as a general manager. Here's what Schefter said on ESPN. I don't know for who. I don't know for what. I don't know when it will happen. They will be moving and shaking as they usually do in Philadelphia. That's the kind of move, a day 3 trade for a veteran that I think that we could see from the Eagles this year. I think they've got as much firepower in this draft as any team out there. When you give a Super Bowl champion roster 20 draft picks over the next 2 drafts to go have fun with, you become a team to watch. It's part of the reason why the Eagles are the class of the NFL. All eyes are on the Eagles. Best owner in the sport, best GM in the sport, a criminally underrated head coach in Nick Sirianni, and a roster that is absolutely loaded. Now, what will the Eagles do with this trade? Will they just make a trade to move up in the draft? Could they trade for a veteran depth piece? Nobody would be shocked if Howie traded for a big name. There's some names out there like a Trey Hendrickson or a TJ Watt. Ian Rappaport reporting on this Tuesday that the Dolphins are going to make Jalen Ramsey available. The latter of which, I don't think the Eagles go after a player like Ramsey, who's 30 years old but still playing at an elite level. But anything is on the table for Howie, which is why this is a talking point on this program. The Eagles' 2025 draft picks, they're loaded with some really good draft capital. First round at 32, second round at 64, third round at 96. They have 1 4th-rounder by way of Detroit at 134. They have 4 5th-round picks from Houston at 161, Cleveland and Detroit at 164, from Washington at 165, and then their own 5th-rounder at 168. But how about the draft capital that they have in the chamber for the 2026 draft? And I want you to focus in on where these picks are. We're talking about 5 picks inside the first 3 rounds on this page alone, right? Their own first, their own second, their own third. They have a third from the Jets, a 3rd-round compensatory pick projected for Milton Williams going to the Patriots, their own 4th, another 4th as a projected compensatory pick for Josh Sweat leaving to go to the Cardinals. They have their own 5th, another 5th from the Texans, a 5th compensatory pick projected for Mekhi Becton going to the Chargers, and then a 7th-round pick of their own. I mean, that is a lot of picks inside the top 3 rounds and in the first 4 rounds. Of course, the Eagles can use those selections to continue to build their roster. That's how you become a sustainable winner, when you have these cost-controlled young players who are under contract and under wraps for the next 4 or 5 years. Or you could use those picks to convince another team to make a trade. It's good stuff. Hope you were informed on today's show. Be sure to give me a follow on social media at Chase_Senior. Large following on X, large following on Instagram. In addition to all of the Eagles content here on YouTube, I put out so much social media content on my social media pages as well.